and welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, like I said, I never knew who might walk through that door. But today I'm excited because before we do a show, we always do a pre-warm-up to get to know the guests, either the day before the show or usually as soon as they walk into the studio. But today we did it just when he walked into the studio. And I'm not going to introduce him yet, but it is so funny the similarities that individuals that come into your life have. With that said, you might want to ask people that you come in contact with to share a little bit about their life. And that's what we do on the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. We create a safe environment to let people share their stories. And usually when you listen to their stories, you find out that you got a great deal in common. Today, I am excited to have one of the best chefs in Indianapolis, Indiana, period. Not just a chef, but this guy's story is truly remarkable because when you hold the name chef, that means you got a lot of experience. But I'm going to let him share his story about how he got that title, chef, and what he's doing now for the community. I'd like to welcome to the show the one, the only Chef Robert Koeller to the show. What's up, Robert?
Oh, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Man, we literally spent almost an hour just talking shit, and realized we got a lot in common. Before we get started, tell the viewers a little bit about you before we get into the story.
All right. Well, Chef Rob Koeller, from Indianapolis. I could say I was an overachiever at a young age. So, I mean, I was 4-year varsity letterman in sports, band, music, and grades. I was, second or third in my class, graduating class. I was class president. I was
okay. You
I was
kept all of that out on the questionnaire.
And then I went off to Purdue School of Engineering, and that was like a reality check. Okay. I used to tell people I had a pretty big ego until I went to Purdue, and that's still true. I could still say that. Purdue, people say that engineering is a weed out course, curriculum, and it is. It weeded me out. But I still graduated from Purdue in psychology,
okay.
Which was a hidden passion of mine.
Did you when you went to Purdue, because Purdue is one of the top 2 schools with engineering.
Correct.
Did you go there with the idea to be an engineer?
Yeah. In fact, when I was in high school, Debbie Knox, who I think you've had on the show,
yeah,
she interviewed me when I was at Lawrence Central High School, and the shuttle was supposed to launch, and they had, at the noon news, they had dedicated, 5 or 10 minutes for the shuttle to go off, but it didn't because it was bad weather, and they had 5 or 10 minutes to kill. So somebody at the studio at Channel 8 said, hey, why don't we interview a engineering Purdue-bound student? So they found me, which is kind of ironic because they just started calling high schools, and my mom worked at the high school.
Okay.
She's like, yeah, I know who.
I know who I could get.
Yeah. So next thing you know, they come in, they interview me. At the time, I was in a
Was
program.
you excited when Debbie Knox interviewed you?
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. But, I don't want to go into detail about that, just besides the fact that I was working at Allison Gas Turbine at the time. I was 17 years old working at Allison.
That's a good job.
Yeah. And it was not a paid job. I was there for experience. It was a
you did an intern
school-sponsored program.
Okay.
Yep.
Were you upset that you didn't get paid? Because when you hear that name, I know how much money you should have been getting paid.
And I was in high school, so they didn't let me do a whole lot. Because, what they did was ultra expensive. A simple little mistake could cost
millions.
Yeah, so there were very little things that they actually had me do. It was mostly for experience because I told them I wanted to be an engineer. So they sent me off and got me an engineering job at Allison. They came and interviewed me with Channel 8 saying I was going to be the next man in space. I mean, it was...
What did you like about engineering? Just curious. What was that? I didn't hear you.
Nothing. No. Besides the fact that I was good in math and science, and everybody that
Was in
I
it.
listened to told me I should be an engineer. Parents,
What did you want to be?
teachers, counselors, you should be an engineer. I'm like, okay.
What was your passion though? If it wasn't engineering,
I found that at Purdue. I started taking electives, and I was like, I'll take intro to psychology. I'll take intro to abnormal psychology. I'll take cognitive psychology. Loved it. Next thing you know, engineering grades are way down. Elective grades are way up. I'm like, I got to switch majors or before I flunk out.
so let's go back a minute. You got a mom that works for the school system. What was your mom and dad's take on you changing in the middle of the street? Because, like you said, you was going to school for everybody else's dreams, and you realize later, and that usually happens in college. You know, I tell my daughter the same thing. She goes, "Well, I want to do it." I said, "Look, take your first year and just enjoy it."
Well, to quote South Park, there's a time and place for everything, and it's
Right.
called college.
Yeah. What was your mom and dad's? What was your mom and dad like first? Before I asked that question, what was their take on all of a sudden you switching?
Well, first off, my parents, I grew up middle class, I would say. It was Avalon Hills, which is northeast side.
I
not
know
too far
exactly
from here.
where it is. That's a nice area. That's not middle class.
No, okay. All right. That's fine. But yeah, my dad was an attorney. I think he always kind of thought that in the back of his mind that maybe I would be an attorney, but
Right.
I that's not me. And I knew it wasn't me early on. I knew I wasn't going to be a suit and tie, briefcase carrying kind of person.
Right.
But to get back to your question, my parents took it quite well, in fact, simply because they didn't want me to get C, D's, and F's, which is what I was getting in engineering.
Right.
I started getting A's and B's, and of course that makes any parent happy.
Why
They
do you
saw
think
that
the
I was
grades?
happy
Why do you think your
studying what I
grades
was
changed
studying.
though? If you're doing good and you're overachiever, all the way up till you got to Purdue, what changed? With your grade points.
Yeah, I mean, I joined a fraternity, which is probably not the smartest thing,
That brought your grades down quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, for anyone that's been through engineering at Purdue, it's kind of like a full-time job. You've got to dedicate a lot of time to get up to par with the learning level.
Right.
And I simply didn't take that time.
Were with all of that pressure, did it at any particular point in your life did this start to take its toll on you? Because people need to realize you're going to Purdue, your dad's a lawyer, your mom works for the school system. You come from a pretty solid background. How much pressure was that on you? And were there any negative results from the pressure?
No, I giggle because I didn't get any pressure about switching from engineering to psychology, but by the time I was due to graduate and start looking for a job, I was a drummer in a band, and I remember telling my parents, hey, I'm going to go on tour with my band, and I'm not going to look for a job, and that didn't sit well with them at all.
Did they sit you down?
They're like, you got to at least try. So I did. I found a job at Koala Hospitals. It was what the...
Now tell the viewers what Koala Hospital, because they don't have those here anymore. But what exactly was Koala for the people that don't know what that is?
It was a rehabilitation center that housed both adult unit and kid unit. I worked with the children, kids. They were teens, basically from 12, 13 up to 17, because once they turned 18, they could actually sign themselves out and say bye-bye.
How did you wind up even getting a job at Koala in the first place? Because are you done with school, or you just...
Yeah, I graduated, I went 4.5 years.
Okay.
So I graduated in December, a December graduate, and I moved home. I was probably with my parents for, 6 or 8 months. It wasn't that long until I moved out and got an apartment with a buddy, but I was only looking for a job for about 2 weeks and found one at Koala. So I went from being graduated to working full time for Koala pretty quickly.
What was it like working at Koala? Because you're dealing with you're dealing with kids
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
are broken to some degree or some type of trauma. You probably didn't see that kind of trauma growing up.
No.
What was
No.
that like for you?
It was, naturally, it was a little hard to relate to some. I mean, some of these kids were literally forgotten about.
Give me an idea when you say forgotten about. Like, do you remember a moment that you?
I won't mention names at all, but I
Right.
remember one young man had parents that lived in town, and after he spent, I want to say, a year at boys' school, and then I think a year at juvenile. It might have been the other way around. I can't remember now, but he had spent 2 years at different facilities for mistakes he had made. He was sent to Koala, and one of the many things I had to do for my job is try to get these kids reconnected if they had parents, because a lot of them didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out this kid's parents were in town, so I'm contacting parents saying, hey, we have your child. We have visitation open this Saturday. Why don't you come by? I think he would appreciate it. And the parents just ignore it. They're
Really?
like, don't call here anymore.
About how old were the kids? Were they underage?
Yeah, they're under.
What's the
this
starting
kid in
age? What's the
particular was
starting age?
17.
17?
Yeah, the starting age was 12, I think.
What were some of the reasons that the parents didn't want to have nothing to do with the kids? Because it's kind of hard to turn your back on your kids, especially when they're in treatment. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Especially when they're in treatment, that means that the resources are there, and they really need the outside support, which is usually
Yeah.
family, to come and assure that no matter, we're going to do this together.
Yep, yep. One of the times I got in trouble with my employer, excuse me, was over the same kid. He found an opportunity when we were playing kickball to run off the property, and I chased him.
Mm-hmm.
And he left the property, and I did too. I'm chasing him down the sidewalk trying to catch him, and I ended up getting in trouble because apparently I wasn't supposed to leave the property. Once the child leaves the property, then we're supposed to call 911.
Because why? They're considered.
AWOL at that time. They're supposed to be at this
Okay.
rehabilitation center.
Okay. So
they
become
called
a
it a
threat.
hospital,
They
but-
become a threat to themselves and a threat to
Others
society.
possibly, yeah.
How does that make you feel, knowing that what was he run? Did he share with you what was really hurting him?
You're gonna make me say it. Well, this kid ended up signing himself out at age 18, bound his parents, and killed them.
What?
Yeah, it made local news, of course. So, having had worked with this kid, I felt like I had gotten nowhere with them. I mean, what help am I? Here I am.
You had to take that really, even though it was
Like
a horrible
obviously didn't
situation.
get anything
That
from
had
me.
to. That had to. Did they ever share with you? Do the people share with you what was it like for him to when you had to go to him and say your parents don't want to come?
We didn't tell him that.
He eventually found out.
Yep. Yeah, so, Andre, it was not the most pleasant environment, and at having a college degree and still at $8 an hour, I was pretty frustrated.
You wind up hearing that news with that particular individual, the killing of both of his parents. You recognize the name. What goes through your mind? Like, did the legal system reach out to you and say what was this kid going
No,
through?
I was never approached about that incident because he was over.
He was an adult now.
He was an adult and it was tried as an adult, of course. But I found out from the Indianapolis Star. It was front page.
How did that change your method while you're still at Koala. You see this. Were you still at Koala when this happened? Mm-hmm. How did that change your outlook? That had to be just as much depressing on you, because the fact is, as let's call it what it is, almost like a caregiver, and then me as a trainer, you want to see people
honestly,
do
Andre,
good.
it made me want to work with the adults because they, as I mentioned, they had a kids unit and an adult unit, and that's what I did. I started working with the adults, and then I became an assessment counselor for them, which meant that I didn't really get to know them. I was talking to people that were coming in looking for help, and if we couldn't help them, it was my job to get them to some place that could.
What do you think is the difference between the adult? Because you said I switched. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between dealing with a child with problems versus, you said, the adults?
The main difference, I would say, is the child doesn't realize they have a problem. It was like almost like I didn't realize I didn't want to be an engineer. Everyone told me I needed to be an engineer. Well, if everyone's telling a child that you've got issues, you got problems, you're doing the wrong behavior, and the child honestly doesn't see it, that's a hard case to make with a child. With an adult, it's a little bit easier because you can bring up what I would say heartstrings and make them kind of face reality, if that makes a sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, how much of your heartstrings did you bring to your craft at that time? Because you went through your own, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of the things that you went through? What were some of your heartstrings that you brought into relating to other people to help navigate them where they needed to be?
The empathy, for sure. You got to put yourself in their shoes. You have to. When a counselor or a therapist says, "Hey, I understand, I know where you've been," you, as a human, you know whether they're
bullshitting.
If they're feeding you a line or not.
Yeah.
I haven't really paid too much attention to astrology, but I know I'm a Pisces, and they say Pisces can blend in with different people. Mm-hmm. I think I've always had the ability to do that. I mean, even in high school, I hung out with everybody.
Was that good?
I hung out with the jocks, the geeks, the drama queens and kings. I hung out with everybody, and everybody seemed to get along with me. I think that was one reason why I was class president. But as a counselor, or even an assessment counselor, making sure that they felt safe with you.
Right.
And if they weren't ready to divulge what's really on their mind, then you take baby steps to get there.
What were some of the tragic things that happened to you in your life? Because to me, you just focused on something. It's funny you said that, because I told my therapist, one of the first questions I asked is, what have you gone through? Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't have to divulge it to me, but he did. Mm-hmm. Now I'm able to relate to it, because I know what, he wasn't feeding me bullshit. Mm-hmm. What were some things that you went through? Because you shared with me some of the things that you went through, from being homeless, from going into somebody's house with your car. I mean, you wasn't a holy angel.
Oh no, I made tons of dumb decisions. Absolutely. And in fact, to be completely honest with you, the most frustrating thing about Koala was the pay.
What do you mean?
It didn't pay very well. I thought, I got a college degree to do this. I should be getting paid more. I know that sounds shallow.
Right.
But at that time, the going rate to cook somebody a good meal paid more than to be their therapist.
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of ironic, but true. It's probably still that way today.
You started out in the mental health, but you have a name attached to you now called Chef. Mm-hmm. How in the hell did you go from dealing with kids, dealing with adults, dealing with your own personal ups and downs, to all of a sudden being a chef?
Yeah, I chalked that up to more dumb mistakes.
What dumb mistakes?
So, in late of 1995, I was with some buddies, and we were drinking, and we decided, hey, let's blow this joint. We're at somebody's residence, mind you. Mm-hmm. Let's leave here and go get Last Call in Broad Ripple. Now, how smart of an idea is that?
I know Broad Ripple. That was not smart by any means.
So, yeah. So, cut to the chase, I didn't see a curve in the road. Literally went straight off the road into the front of a home.
Was those Long Island iced teas?
I don't even remember. But there was an angel watching me that night because, one, I wasn't hurt. My car was totaled. Their house was a mess, but that's all fixable. Nobody
Who was in
hurt
the car
in the
with
house.
you? Was somebody in the car with you?
Someone was in the car with me. They weren't hurt. Nobody was hurt. And the police officer on duty that came knew that I had been drinking and said, listen, you've got enough mess to deal with. I'm not even going to breathalyze you. So no charges. Now, the family did take me to civil court over insurance, but that was insurance. That wasn't.
I can't imagine me in the bed, sleep, and all of a sudden a car comes through my house.
Yeah, I think that was the second time Debbie Knox reported on me, I think.
She knows you personally.
Oh, yeah. She's like, we're trying to figure out how to get a car out of a home this morning.
When you come through, they don't take you to jail.
No, they actually took me to the hospital to check me out. I did have some pretty bad bruises, but no broken bones. I was released hours later. My father came and got me.
What went through your mind? Because in a normal, any other, and you know this, in any other situation, you've been locked up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Saving grace. I know somebody up there is looking after me at that point. There was no doubt about it. I mean, that was a life-changing event. And I say for the positive, even though people that are in food service would say, oh, God, that was a turn for the worse. Because people in food service say, well, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't go food service, but I would. Because that's where I really found my passion, through that incident. So
you get in an accident. How did food come into it? Did you go get a Whopper?
No, my parents did the tough love thing with me. They were not going to help me out anymore financially.
Really?
Yeah, they were there, of course, if I wanted to talk to them, but not another cent.
So you go home right after the accident. The police let you go home. Your mom and dad both picked you up?
My dad did, yeah.
What was his first, if you can remember, what was the first thing he said?
We actually went by the house I crashed into before going home so I could check in, make sure that family was fine. Because there were 4 people in the home, and none of them were injured either.
I know that had to be a tough situation for you to get out.
Oh, it was very
and
tough.
Walk in there. What did you tell them? Oh, I'm the guy that ran into your car because I was intoxicated?
They actually, the wife actually cried because I was okay.
Really? Mm-hmm. So now you get back in the car with your dad. What's that like?
Disappointing.
Did he tell you he was disappointed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I believe my car was still in their home at that time. They couldn't take it out because it was structurally unsound. They had to come in with the construction crew and hoist the second floor up to get my car out because I had hit some serious beams. The whole house was going to collapse. It was that bad.
How do you devise a game plan? You have no car. Your mom and dad says...
I wanted to show them I was serious, so I enlisted, enrolled, whatever, signed up for the Salvation Army program, downtown Indianapolis. It was a 90-day program, I believe.
What did the 90-day program consist of? What did you have to do?
basically, it's not jail, but you basically, it's, at the time, I don't know if it still functions this way today, but at the time it was kind of like a halfway home.
Okay.
Rehabilitation. So a lot of therapy sessions, group counseling. After you earned a certain amount of merits, they allowed you to go out and try to find jobs. So I earned merits, went out, started job hunting. Without a car, I had to find places I could walk to. Circle Center Mall was brand new at the time. And I said, I'm going to get a job at one of the food places. And California Cafe was on the 3rd floor at the time. They had a separate bakery. They had a banquet room. It was pretty big restaurant. Mm-hmm. I just said, I want to work there.
Did you have any experience? You just came in as
I had cooked in college. I had cooked at various restaurants and bars, but it was just a way to make money. I never really thought of it as serious income.
How did you feel about the fact that your mom and dad, who's been there from, all of a sudden said, figure it out?
At the time, it was hard to cope with, but, you know, this was in 96 now, so I've had plenty of time to to get okay with that, and I'm glad they were that way. In fact, it's shaped me into who I am today. Which the funny thing about getting a job at California Cafe is that I didn't go in and get an interview and talk with somebody and they hired me on the spot. I show up every day.
You had to prove.
Yeah, I show up every day and be like, "Are you ready to hire me yet? You ready to hire me yet?"
Oh, so you was on a work trial because you were still part of a program,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to make sure you was going to.
General manager was a Purdue grad, so that kind of helped. When he found out that I was, he's like, "Okay." So they hired me as basically a simple cook position. And within, I want to say 18 to 24 months, under 2 years worth of time, mm-hmm. I went from cook to lead cook to shift supervisor to sous chef. And then the regional, who wasn't from Indianapolis, he came in and interviewed me and said he wanted to make me chef in training of their Denver store. Because California Cafe was a chain. It actually came from Victoria Station. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Same company, different concept.
Okay.
Yeah, Victoria Station.
So how many, when those doors open up, how fast did they open up for you in the restaurant field? Because now you're on a whole different
ball game. Yeah.
Ball game.
I updated my resume, said I was looking for a chef's job, and found one, I don't know, probably about a month after I sent out my resume to places. I found a job as executive chef at Midtown Grill in Broad Ripple. That was my first.
Did you have any college experience with this? Because you went to Purdue, and you didn't go there for that.
No, at Purdue, I worked at Damon's Ribs, slinging ribs and onion loaves, and I worked at several different bars.
So basically, your experience came from cooking.
Yeah. So most of my experience up to that point was California Cafe and what I had learned from cookbooks. Because, I mean, this is before the internet as well. So I was like a sponge when it came to cookbooks.
How does your life change when you recognize that you made amends with everything? Your mom and dad sees the change in you. You see the change in yourself. You're now a world-renowned chef. What's that like for you?
Right now is probably the first time in my entire career I can say I have a good work-life balance.
Really?
Because, I mean, being a chef in the industry means you're married to your business. So long hours, you know, every night, every weekend, every holiday, other people making plans, having vacations, you're working.
What have you learned from all of this? If you had to, you're here on the show, and I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. But What have you learned from all that you've gone through?
What I have learned is that you've got to stay humble. You've got to listen to others. I think there's far too many people that try to do it alone and they struggle. I think great people come from not just themselves being great, but who they surround themselves with. And know that not a thing in this world revolves around you.
You went to school. You're passionate about being a therapist and helping other people. How does your cooking help that particular aspect? Because you still have that passion in you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So how does that? How did you transfer that into going back to helping kids?
I stayed in the business as long as I have because I loved seeing the customer's reaction. I loved seeing people's faces light up when they bite into my food, or they see a dish presented and a server comes out and puts it in front of them. I mean, now everyone's got cell phones, but I mean, I'm talking where people would.
I know.
Before everybody had a camera, where people would take a bite and the next thing you know, they're sharing it and everyone's got their forks crossed.
Yeah.
And taking bites of each other's dishes. That was heaven to me. Knowing that I could make people smile through my food made it.
Especially when you walk in through the studio and I'm doing a show and the young lady goes, "Oh, he makes the best." What she said, sushi. He takes the time, and that shows that you leave an impact. When you walk into the studio and you're watching me do a show, and this lady is all the way in another state, remembers you.
Was she in Oklahoma?
Yeah, remembers you and recognizes a simple dish. Well, I don't even think it's simple because I don't know how to make sushi, but she remembered you in sushi.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing something different now. You're working with kids in the school system. Explain that a little bit for the viewers.
Yeah, right now I am helping Westfield, Washington School District transfer from a third-party food and beverage management company to bringing it in-house and doing it all on their own. And most of that's systems related.
What's the pros and the cons of that? Because I'm in the fitness industry. I like nutritional food, but I've also seen that some of the food that the kids are getting isn't the best nutritionally sound foods. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What's the
absolutely.
pros and cons with you stepping in and getting rid of the middleman, so to speak?
Right. The pros mostly are on client side, Westfield, Washington. Mostly the pros behind that is customizable program to make changes with their system that they have been using. To make changes could be done only seasonally or quarterly, at best monthly. But going self-op and doing it all themselves, if they try something that doesn't work, they don't have to ever serve it again. They can make that change that night. Because a lot of it is compliancy issues. That's why a lot of food services within K-12 are roped in to staying compliant within government regulations for the food, if that makes sense. It's got to be low fat. It's got to be low sodium. It's got to be whole wheat. 80% of what we serve has to be whole wheat. 20% doesn't necessarily have to be, but I mean that means whole wheat pastas, whole wheat pizza doughs, whole wheat Pop-Tarts. I mean, and they simply just don't taste the same.
Right.
So,
yeah, you can best believe that.
They simply don't. I mean, there's a learning curve as far as taste buds are concerned. There's a learning curve as far as what the government says it's okay to serve versus what's not okay to serve.
Does this vary from how much involvement is the state and local involved in this program, or is this just government owned?
The state runs it for the federals. feds. So the Indiana Department of Education is ultimately who I answer to on a compliance point of view.
How much impact do you have in the food selection process for our kids? Because you are a chef, you know what food should taste like, and you're right. Multi-grain is going to taste a lot different than this particular grain, and this processed food is going to taste a lot different than that processed food. Because clearly, you don't want to implement certain foods that's going to wind up being wasteful, and you're losing money because the kids aren't even eating the product.
That, correct. So yeah, the point is to get kids to eat. That's the whole point. Statistics show that kids perform better if
they're fed.
When they're fed. But Andre, it really boils down to who is controlling the budget and who's doing the ordering of the food. I'll give you an example of something as simple as a chicken nugget. It could be a whole muscle chicken nugget,
or rib,
or it could be what they call that meat paste. That
the fillers.
And both products could be K-12 approved. Both products could be okay to serve to our kids. Obviously, one's going to have 3 or 4 times the cost of the other one. So what are you going to budget for? Do you want?
I get you.
You know,
what's your take on that? Because you got a system that's checks and balances, but you have a sense of moral as a chef, as a parent, and as a counselor that dealt with troubled kids. So you've seen the whole 9 yards. How much of your ethics do you put into this to persuade them to go that way when you got a government and city officials that say, well, we need to save money? Because we do know that it's at the end of the game, it's always money. Checks and balances.
Yeah, absolutely. It is tough. I personally have never done K-12, and I've been doing it now for a couple of years, and I'm still learning things about like meal patterns. Like, why are the kids getting a potato chip snack in the AM and a fruit juice in the PM? Shouldn't it be a fruit juice in the morning and maybe a potato chip in the afternoon? But it doesn't fit meal patterns.
Right.
And meal patterns are based upon calories and nutritional info more than anything else. So there's a great deal of thought that gets put behind a simple menu planning, even at an elementary school level.
Now, do you work closely with some of the leaders in nutrition here when you make your decision, collaborating with this program?
Yeah, there's Westfield belongs to a co-op, which has 12 other local schools in it. So most of the schools in Hamilton County, for instance, belong to this co-op. So you have a solid base of people you can ask, for sure. We have a nutritionist, dietitian on board. I am not. So, and then, of course, can't forget that the government has its own nutritional calculators.
Right.
So, I mean, I can literally take a picture of nutritional label on a box, upload it to the government site, and the government can tell me if it's kosher or not.
Now, you said something about Westfield. Are the charter schools part of this program as well?
They can be, yeah.
They can, so they're not, but they can be.
Yeah, yeah. The co-op is open to anything.
Is this a first-time trial that Westfield is doing in their system? Because I didn't hear you say...
For Westfield, it is, yes. They've always... now, I don't know the full back history, but I know for at least 2 decades, 20-some-odd years, they've used a third-party food service management company, which basically means they're paying all the fees associated with that.
So are they trying to take this... Is Westfield the launch pad for this operation, and then hopefully it will manifest itself into Carmel, Noblesville, Westfield,
unfortunately, it's
and
the
downtown?
other way around. I think the other schools have started this first.
Okay, so
Westfield's a little behind the game.
We're behind the game. What have been the results of the people that's already implemented this? What have you seen with kids accepting the food, education grade levels going up, mental alertness? What statistics have you heard?
From what I can see, is that elementary school level, no matter where you're at, Westfield, Noblesville, Carmel, Zionsville, Lawrence, elementary school level participation, pretty high percentage.
Okay.
85% in some cases, even higher. As the child gets older, there's less participation.
Okay.
So the true indicator, in my opinion, this is just my opinion only, is look at high school participation. And don't quote me on any of these numbers, but if you can get 50 to 60% participation on a high school level, you're doing something right.
Right.
You're doing something right. And what I have seen firsthand is a lot of these schools that are in this co-op that also run self-op. They run their food service on their own. I have seen increase in the high school participation.
Before we wrap up, I'm going to ask another question. We're talking about kids all the way up to teenagers. How much impact are they bringing to the table? Are you guys just, what kind of data are you getting from them outside of them actually
No, that's a
eating
great
the
question.
food?
Because we've done everything from surveys to alerts to even having check marks next to it or X, happy faces, frown faces. We've done
So you do a survey
everything
pretty
you
much.
can do, and what we have found is that the more surveys you give the students, the less participation you have in the survey.
Really?
So it almost defeats the purpose. So it's got to be strategic, and we got to think outside the box when it comes to their feedback. Like right now, we're experimenting with taste panels, and not just like, oh, here's a select class who are gonna try this new recipe on. No, we'll give it out for free to anyone that wants to try it. Get their instant feedback right then and there.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Do you guys have that?
And then you have a lot of biasness too, because if you don't pay for something, you're given something for free, you tend to say, yeah, it's great. I mean, kids tend to. I know. Maybe adults don't treat it the same way, but if I say, here, try this, you don't have to pay for it, they're going to say it's great.
They do it at Costco all the time.
Absolutely
It's called
right.
the free samples.
Absolutely right. So it is strategic in our maneuvers and trying to get feedback. Even have student panels.
Right. I was going to ask, you guys have student panels that
Yeah.
share what they. When you looked at the data from the kids, what are they gravitating to more to see in their food selection? Is it more fruits? Is it more like Hot Pockets? Is it more grains? What is it? What are some of the foods that they're really asking for?
Historically speaking, and this is high school level,
Okay.
they're going to go for the pizza, the burgers, the nachos, the hot dogs, the mac and cheese. Those five
You
things.
can't go wrong with mac and cheese.
those five things are what they're going to gravitate towards historically. Now,
Right.
what we've seen recently is more requests for Asian. So hot and cold noodles, which I see going over very well at Westfield, for instance. Even having, instead of a salad bar, having a cold noodle bar, Asian style. Sushi.
Okay.
There's a local outfit. I think they're right here, Keystone Sushi Boss.
Okay.
They go into high schools. They'll make it. It's K-12 compliant. It's whole grain rice. They'll make it, bring it into the school. Of course, you pay a premium for it, but
Right.
it's a luxury, an amenity, if you will, as an extra that we're offering the students.
With all you've been through, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come and share your journey, what you're doing for the community.
We gotta
out
have
of
a
your-
part two.
Yeah, I plan on it. It won't be. We know what part 2 is going to be about, so we're not going to talk about that yet. Before we wrap up, out of all that you've been through, leave the viewers with something that you live by every day that keeps you going.
something that keeps me going every day is to have no regrets. And what I mean by that is if my behavior is something that I'm going to later on look back and go, man, I shouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And why in the heck did I even do it to begin with? I mean, I've made enough mistakes in my life that I try to think things through.
Mm-hmm.
I constantly remind myself of what I've been through so that I don't make what I call stupid mistakes. I've been saying that this whole episode. Mm-hmm. Stupid mistakes, dumb mistakes. Mm-hmm. Things that you do that you don't really think about until it affects others. Because one thing you have to realize, Andre, is people don't do things to you. They do things for themselves. And then it affects you in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Whether that effect is positive or negative, it's really up to you.
Right.
I mean...
That's deep.
Yeah. I refuse to be a victim in anything. That's the victim mentality. Is are you doing something to me? What are you doing to me? You know, I refuse. They're doing it for themselves.
How can the viewers reach out to you? That if they have questions or they want to know about implementing this in their school system, like you said, it hasn't hit the charter schools yet. How can the viewers reach out to you?
I have a website. It's cchconsultants.com or rob@cchconsultants.com is my email. I answer both from website and direct, of course. And it's not the first time I've helped companies go self-op either. One of my first clients was the Marat Shrine of downtown. They had a third-party food service management company, and they said, we want to bring it in-house like they did in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And so I helped them make that transition. That was a number of years ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know, when you come back for part 2, you got to bring sushi because, like I said, there's nowhere in the world somebody walks through the door and sees a guest on the show and they say, he makes the best sushi. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.